Welcome, welcome, welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, people, I am in airplane mode. And now a man who thinks that common sense is far too generous of a term. How you doing, my one black friend?
I am excellent. The wedding is next Saturday, so I'm very excited.
The what? The who? The huh?
Wedding. Yeah.
The huh? The what?
The prophecy is true. Yeah. Finally, after almost 2.5 years.
So you're getting married next week?
I'm getting
Holy
married
crap!
next
That came
Saturday.
out of nowhere. Where? All right. Where? What? Yeah. Where? I guess that's the main.
Well, I needed a place, so I asked my neighbor, who's a minister. He says you can get married at my church for free. So,
awesome.
He's hooking it up. So, yeah, it'll be out here in California. You can come along if you want.
Are people coming? Are they going to travel? Are they?
You know what? We were in a tough spot because we're dealing with immigration. So there's a lot of things that we just didn't know when they would happen.
Right.
So most people have less than a week's notice to see if they can make it.
Yes.
So we're probably going to have like 17 people there, and that's it. But
yeah, probably gonna be the volunteers from the church.
I can say, hey, who wants to go to the Chinese buffet after? And we could all just carpool over there, and I can say it's on us. We'll take care of it. And so,
yeah, when you
go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say when you really want to marry somebody, it's never about all that, and you don't care where and who and how. You just want to be married,
Yes.
So
yes.
that's very exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, because for those that don't know, your fiance is from Cuba, right?
Yep.
And had to move to closer to you to be with you sooner than expected due to due to Cuba. Let's just put it on Cuba due to what's going on in Cuba. So it's a Cuba issue.
Exactly. And due to certain upcoming government restrictions,
yes,
her leaving was rather immediate.
Yeah. And but now that she's there, y'all just like, hey, we're here. Let's do this.
To her credit, she's very remarkable, and she has been. I had things that were not, let's just say, organized, and she's been going through one by one and turning. I won't say chaos. It wasn't disorganized completely, but there were just the order that she has brought to so many different areas. I'm like, okay, I'm very impressed. All this was okay before.
Yeah,
but it's
sounds like that what we call nesting in biology.
Yes.
It was your place, and it was doing all right.
It was all right.
It was doing all right, but now it's her place too, and so she's making herself at home, and that's good. That's always good.
She's pulling weeds with me and raking pine needles and all that stuff.
Oh, does she's learned about the pine needles? Pine needles didn't make her want to go back to Cuba.
Did not. Like, I knew the trees were nice, but I didn't know the trees could be awful too.
Yeah. So, there you go.
But I told her at our next house, if there's a pine tree there, I'm cutting it down before we move in. If it can drop a needle within I'd say if it could fall over and hit the house, or if the needle will fall on the roof or a paved area, that tree's out of there. Because they never stop, ladies and gentlemen. All year round, those needles are dropping.
All right. Well, that's news. We got caught up. That's some interesting news.
Yes.
Let's go ahead and get into.
But wait, what about you? What's going on in your world, Pocket?
Oh, not just work, and more work. Nothing interesting at all. But yeah. So today's episode is all about how Jehovah's Witnesses lies. I think the video that we're gonna be watching is actually fantastic. I caught it kind of while I was doing some things around the house. And yeah, I think it's really great. And, you know, the main thing I'm going to be focused on is sort of expanding the conversation a little bit so that we can think about how this applies to Christianity as well. And yeah, we'll go from there. But let's go ahead and jump into it. Updated with the Autobots transform and roll out. And let's see, let's kind of go. I don't know what we're going to do here for. Let's try it like that.
If you've met a Jehovah's Witness before, chances are they have lied to you. That's because Jehovah's Witnesses lie all the time. They have to, as a high control, so they can keep members indoctrinated, avoid legal action, and get followers to do what they're told. However,
yeah, it looks like your camera turned off.
What's going on?
I have no idea.
Caramba.
You ask the Jehovah's Witness, they would tell you that they are the most honest people in the world. That's because Jehovah's Witnesses rarely lie directly. Instead, they use a lot of mental gymnastics to reply not with the truth, but with whatever they think the other person wants to hear. Let me explain. One of the most common...
my friend, we can still hear you. Do you want to maybe try refreshing your camera? Can you hear us?
Okay, folks. I don't know if you can hear me or see me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
It's as if I have no signal. My internet speed is just fine.
Try refreshing. Try reloading. Restream. I don't know if I don't think you can hear us.
It's doing nothing.
That's no good. Where's the? All right. So while he does that, let's go ahead and get into it, man. So this is the first major thing right here, right? Is that, and this is something I've actually been kind of bringing up and asking on the channel. So I was excited to hear this brought up, which is the fact. Sorry. Which is this conundrum between the fact that, to most of us on the outside looking in, these religions are clearly false. And that does mean advocating for them is advocating for something that is not true, at least we can tell. And so how do these people get away with assuming the identity of an honest person? Matter of fact, I hate to say this, but sort of in an arrogant way. Like I do believe in many ways that most religions they're your ego, and they're finding a religious excuse to actually think you're better than people. We could get into that some other time, but most religions, you know, very few people are in their religion without there being some sort of claim to, like, they're doing it right, they're doing it better, they have more character, they have more morals, right? So how do you get away with claiming to have? So we could see you before. I don't know what you changed, but then it went away again. How do you have more morals if you're constantly lying, or you're like I say, there's no honest way to defend something that isn't true? And that's the same thing Christians do. Christians do the same thing Jehovah's Witnesses do. They do the tap dancing, the word games, the juking and jiving, so that they can get to something that sounds good, that sounds like what they think the person wants to hear, without directly hitting the truth. And by the way, I think that's super dishonest. But that's what we're going to be getting more into, sort of how that game plays out.
Jehovah's Witnesses lie is by using approximations of the truth. If you ask a Jehovah's Witness a question with an answer that will sound bad, the Jehovah's Witness instead focus on whatever part of the truth sounds better and pretends that part of the truth is the whole truth. For example, let's take a look at how parents have to treat their kids when they do something the religion doesn't like and they get disfellowshipped and have to be shunned.
But because I didn't have a hatred for what's bad, I couldn't see anything wrong with my choices. This eventually led me to do things I later regretted. I ended up getting disfellowshipped.
Erickson has been disfellowshipped.
It crushed my whole family. Later, my father explained to me that I couldn't remain in the home because I refused to change my lifestyle. He told me I was having a negative effect on my younger brother and sister. And I'm out of this house. Mom and Dad saw that they needed to be loyal, just like Aaron. They loved me and wanted me to come back to Jehovah. I tried to contact them. I just wanted to talk and to hear their voice. I missed being with my family. And they thought about reaching out to me. But they knew that if they had associated with me, even a little, just to check on me, that small dose of association might have satisfied me.
Parents are encouraged to even kick children out of
Actually, I'm gonna let him talk
the
real quick.
house if
We'll interrupt in a sec.
religion if they can. And after that, they cannot have any contact with them other than for emergencies. We just saw the daughter was trying to call her mom, and her mom didn't even pick up the call. This is how every Jehovah's Witness must treat anyone who is disfellowshipped, even if they are their sons or daughters, with communication and association kept to the minimum, even if they live in the same household. So what happens when the Jehovah's Witnesses write a frequently asked question aimed to people outside their religion? To answer the question, do Jehovah's Witnesses shun those who used to belong to their religion? Well, instead of being honest and saying a simple yes, because that is the correct answer, they say, we reach out to them and try to rekindle their spiritual interest. This is only an approximation to the truth, since the only Jehovah's Witnesses who are allowed to do that are elders. And then say this, what if a man who is disfellowshipped, but whose wife and children are still Jehovah's Witnesses? The religious tie he had with his families changed, but the blood ties remain. The marriage relationship and normal family affections and dealings continue. We know this is a lie. We just saw it in their own drama. But this is a lie that Jehovah's Witnesses repeat in court when they've been questioned about it under oath.
As the meeting progressed with Mr. Wall, the elders came to the decision that Mr. Wall was not sufficiently repentant for his disgraceful conduct, and the congregation elders took the decision to disfellowship him. That word is used by Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses don't use the word shun or shunning. They refer to it as disfellowship, disfellowshipping, disfellowshipped, because that really gives the sense of what's taking place within this particular religious community. Disfellowship literally means no further spiritual fellowship with the individual. And as I point out, sorry, Chief Justice, as I point out at paragraph 22 of my factum, the nature of the relationship then of a disfellowship person is not completely shunned. The disfellowship person is able to come into the congregation, to the congregation meetings. They're able to attend in the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses. They're able to sit wherever they like. They can sing the spiritual songs with the congregation. As far as their family members are concerned, normal family relations continue with the exception of spiritual fellowship. And
so how do they get
All right, I want to touch on this real quick, and there's a few things that are jumping out here to me that remind me of Christianity. First off, the Christianese, the coming up with a different term, right? He said the quiet part out loud. Jehovah's Witnesses don't use the term shunning or anything like that. We use the term disfellowship, right? So they're already coming up with a different word for it because they know it's not appropriate. Part of what I talk about with Christianity is what's called soft culting, and this is a perfect example of soft culting. it's easy for a Christian to look out at the Jehovah's Witness and see this disfellowshipping as what I call like a sign of a cult, and like a hard cult move. You know, wow, you know, you cut off your people or whatever. But Christians do this too, right? You know, a lot of y'all were probably raised with the Christian household, you know, the sort of like not in my household type of thing. Yeah, you could live however you want to live, like, you know, once you're on your own and, you know, out and all of that. And it's sort of like a similar thing where it's like my house, my rules type of thing, where you are very well aware that you have to live according to their Christian values or risk being put out your goddamn home. And those of us that have stepped out in a different, you know, lifestyles on our own, like we're not living the Christian churchy life or whatever, know of sort of the informal, just like the way relationships change and they're never the same again. And all of that serves as like a coercive pressure to get you to stay in the faith or get you back in the faith. And the one thing that I think is sort of the proof is in the pudding of what I'm talking about is so many people in the atheist community won't even tell their family that they're atheist.
Mm-hmm.
You literally like can't tell your mother or your grandmother or your father or whoever it is that you don't believe this stuff. So why? Like if you wear a different shirt, you'd be able to tell them about that. If you had a new favorite sports team, took a new job, found a new partner, like any of these sort of life events you share with your family, why won't you share that with your family? I'm not asking y'all to tell me because I already know the answer. I'm asking you to ask yourself, because that should tell you like you have a real fear there. You're actually afraid of something. And it's usually fear of, in some cases, the loss of that relationship, but in most cases, if not the loss of the relationship, certainly the way the relationship would change and how the person would be affected by all of it. And gang, that's a form of coercive pressure. If I'm so afraid of the truth that I can't even share it with somebody, yeah, there's a messed up power dynamic in that relationship. The other thing is, think about how central the spiritual and religious realm is to these people. In many cases, it's their identity. And so, and this is kind of a weird thing when you're dealing with religious people. Because you could talk to a religious person and they could know you're not religious. And you could explain something that's going on difficult in your life. And many times their response will be what? Well, I'll pray for you. Mm-hmm. This is why I have such a hard time being in relationships with religious people, because, you know, God forbid you need them and they become the people you depend on. When you actually need help, they're going to like go to the cross for you. But I don't even believe that realm exists. And so it's just an example of how they actually live lives that are dominated by that spiritual realm. So even if they quote unquote just dissociate from you spiritually, it's a huge dissociation because of just how much the spiritual realm means to them. And that's where you start to see how Christianity does this same thing, right? And that's why those relationships change so much, because so much of their identity is prayer and being in the word and going to church and their Bible study and that yada, yada, yada. And when you all of a sudden are partaking in all of that, now they don't know how to deal with you. So it's a bit softer, it's a bit less explicit, but it's that same theme. It's that same, how do they get away with, you know, claiming to be the most honest people in the room, practicing this thing that isn't true? Well, a lot of it is just maintaining pressure to keep social harmony, and then being willing to make up things and say whatever they need to say to maintain that. Go ahead, my one black friend.
Yeah, I think they have some scriptures to derive this from, the witnesses. So what comes to mind too, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, 14 to 16, maybe to 16. Do not be yoked together with unbelievers. There you go.
Oh yeah, no, I think the Bible the Bible makes it pretty clear.
For what do righteousness and wickedness have in common? Or what fellowship can light have with darkness? What harmony is there between Christ and Belial? Or what does a believer have in common with an unbeliever? What agreement is there between the temple of God and idols? For we are the temple of the living God, as God has said, I will live with them and walk among them, and I will be their God, and they will be my people. Therefore, come out from them and be separate, says the Lord. Touch no unclean thing, and I will receive you. So that's some of what we're dealing with this shunning. The leaders of the witnesses, or whichever denomination there is, can easily pull this out of the mothballs and say, look, folks, this is we're getting it from the Apostle Paul himself here, if this is written by Paul. Paul. So this is mandate. This is part of the word of God as they believe it. So out of all the things that are hard to follow, this one might be kind of on the hardest of things to follow, because here's someone you may have loved your entire life and loved so dearly, and now you're being asked to step away from that person, and that's just more trauma that's being induced. I would imagine this is a very common for different faiths, sects of Christianity. But yeah, within the witnesses, the Jehovah's Witnesses, it is. I have another. I don't know if this is specifically what they're getting at, but this could be used as, if you will, confirmation too. 1 Corinthians 5. And we'll start at verse 9. I wrote to you in my letter not to associate with sexually immoral people, not at all meaning the people of this world who are immoral, or the greedy and swindlers or idolaters. In that case, you would have to leave this world. But now I am writing to you, you must not associate with anyone who claims to be a brother or sister, but who is sexually immoral or greedy, an idolater or slanderer, a drunkard or swindler. Do not even eat with such people. So if a person is, let me continue. Verse 12, what business is it of mine to those outside the church, or to judge those outside the church, forgive me. Are you not to judge those inside? God will judge those outside. Expel the wicked person from among you. So if the person has whatever, they want to sleep with their loved one, that isn't a member of that church, and the people in the church are trying to hold them back from that, and they're just trying to be a human being with their desires. This is another reason they could be asked to be to leave or be disfellowshipped. Again, the justification's right here in the pages. I would be willing to bet that slanderers and greedy people almost never get thrown out of the church. They're probably some of the most respected people in the church, because the greedy person might have considerable wealth, and the swindler might be very good, or have tremendous wealth too. And people who are slanderers might have just, oh, that's a great person to talk to because they know what's going on. But the Bible rails against being a gossip. But it doesn't matter to most people if they're getting what they want, if they have what they want.
Away with this bold lie when we have seen their reality. Well, this isn't a full lie, it's an approximation of the truth. This specific scenario only applies to a parent of minors who has been disfellowshipped, since that alone isn't reason enough to get a divorce. And since the parent will still be expected to parent their children. That's literally the only scenario where a disfellowshipped person can maintain contact with their believing family, if they are a parent of children. But this isn't like the sons never have to shun their parents. If a parent is disfellowshipped when the kid is already grown up, they're to be shunned by them. And their sons and daughters should instead look for a replacement inside the religion, as one of their deleted videos from their last convention clearly showed.
Mom's disfellowshipping still feels so raw.
Elsa, please speak up. I miss you so much. I just want to hear your voice.
It's such a struggle. I miss her. She taught me the truth. Gave me a stable life. She was my closest friend. What's the harm in just calling once in a while? To chat. What has Jehovah promised me if I patiently wait? Spiritual brothers? Sisters? And mothers.
Pocket Locker, can you pause it? Can you pause it, please? So we have some comments. I saw Chris Moore's comments. I can no longer read it. But in the Jehovah's Witnesses' own video here, that church is practically empty. It's less than half full in their own video. So I think that's the way things are going. Those seats are going to continue to empty because people now, it's easier to be in touch than ever. And I'd argue probably more necessary with as many challenges and as hectic as the world is. I was talking, so I didn't read his comment. Can you put it back up, or can you read his comment? Because it's off my screen. Okay, funny thing is that I went to grade school with JW, public, and out of necessity, they, I think he means they, ignore those considering they're pretty much hardcore. So, okay, I guess out of necessity, they're ignoring people who are shunned. Kind of have to put the blinders up. I had some very close friends growing up who, they were my best friends, some of my best friends, who were Jehovah's Witnesses. And it was like it was name only. You know, it's the label only. I never saw any religious behavior out of those guys. Their mom and maybe two of their sisters, yes, but them, no. But I guess I can see why these things can happen. You do have those devotees who, in front of their congregation and their God, feel it's part of their righteousness. It's the path they must walk on in order to remain spiritual, because maybe the appeal of a lifestyle that isn't so, I don't want to use the word rigid, but that's the word that comes to mind, that isn't so aligned, is the path that they want, where there's some leeway, where they can relax, where they can have a bigger circle of friends and influence. There's some more comments. I can't read them all, Pocket Locker. They're off my screen because I went from my iPad to my phone because it kept having technical difficulties.
Okay. Let's roll the tape.
If I focus on what I do have and wait patiently, someday, what I don't have may even come back to Jehovah.
As far as their family members are concerned, normal family relations continue.
But when asked on the website, or even when asked by the law, they take the one scenario where a disfellowship person can retain a connection to their family and ignore how Jehovah's Witnesses break apart families with disfellowshipping. You will never see a Jehovah's Witness admit to the court that they are expected to shun family members when they get disfellowshipped, and must never talk to them again, often pretending like they're dead. Nor that the religion encourages believers who remain in the religion to look for replacements for the people they're shunning among the remaining indoctrinated members. The article even says disfellowship individuals may attend our religious services, without mentioning that disfellowship people must sit in the back and cannot say anything to anyone in the congregation, and no one in the congregation is allowed to even say hello to them. This is yet another approximation of the truth, because it takes that little fraction that is true, that disfellowship people are allowed to go to the congregation, and leave the rest of the truth unsaid. This is a very clear lie. If you cheated on your wife,
this is kind of, Christians kind of do this too. When, you know, anybody's allowed to visit our church, anybody's welcome in our congregation, but actuality, you've got to go through certain hurdles or hoops to actually be considered a member, such that you actually, you know, get in on what's going on with the church and who the leaders are and the activities and things like that. And you may not be able to join the church if you can't, if you won't sign the statement of faith or agree to the church's mission or vision or things like that. So this is another, again, I'm going to make a video on this, but this is again one of those areas where you see the difference between hard culting and soft culting, where a lot of religious groups just do milder versions of these things, and that becomes acceptable. The other thing that's very interesting to me here is, in some sense, I actually support cutting people off.
Really?
Yeah, but I think it should work in reverse. I think people need to cut off the religious people in their lives. It's the difference between saying you can't play with us because you're black and you can't play with us because you're a racist, right? Like, most people understand you can't play with us because you're black is fucked up. Most people also understand you can't play with us because you're a racist is needed to let this person know that you can't just keep being this way and the rest of us are going to pretend it's okay and like it's not happening. I think most of I've started to talk about this, but I think, you know, it starts with control what you can control. And you often can't control, you just can't, you just can't control what other people do, but you can control what you do. So I focus more of the sort of religion versus non-religion conversation on myself and other atheists or people who think like me or don't believe in the same way I don't believe. And I really do feel like a lot of times we're responsible for the religiosity of the people in our lives, not to the extent that we're endorsing it, but to the extent that we're enabling it. And most of us are enabling it because we're not comfortable with the cost of actually providing consequences for these people. And the reason they won't change their behavior is because there's no consequences for the way they behave. But a lot of these people, because here's what happens. Like, I'm not gonna name names, but like, if you talk to me right here sitting in front of you, Jay Bundy, and a whole bunch of my friends, you know, we could tell you about how a relationship with family is strained over this, right? So it's like, it's almost like it's gonna happen. But yeah, I think there's a place in which cutting someone off because they're part of a harmful cult and just trying to, and obviously I wouldn't say that's your first option or like your go-to move, but I do think it can be appropriate, especially when you're trying to say to a person, I just don't want you to live this way anymore, and I can't continue to just be around it. Look, the other way to me is sometimes just as harmful. Like I get irritated at even myself for thinking about the ways in which I've let like people in my family just drop it. Like I get that they don't want to argue about faith, and I'm fine speaking to them and not having an argument. But to me, it's sort of like it's very cowardly. It's on both sides, because it's very like you push this on people. You harmed me with this. You did great emotional trauma to me that I deal with every day, and I will deal with every day for the rest of my life. And then it's like, but you want to have access to me like you've done nothing wrong to me, and never acknowledge that all the things you've done wrong. And then we teach people that that's an acceptable way to treat us, because we'd rather not argue too, right? But think about it. Like if you had an abusive partner or a bad friend or a supervisor who mistreated you or a work colleague that lied to you, at a certain point you would cut them off.
Yeah.
And
true.
And if you ever consider dealing with that person again, it would only be on the other side of some accountability, right? You have to come to say, hey, my one black friend, I really wasn't a good friend, back in 2017. And, I've reflected on that, and you didn't deserve any of that. And, if you could give me another chance, things are going to be different, like that type of accountability. But we don't get that. We don't get that. We just get, oh, you want to sweep it under the rug? That's fine. So it's a very, and I just think that that's the type of nuance people have to be comfortable with, right? There's a time and a place for everything. And I think when a cult shuns people for not believing it's nonsense, that's terribly abusive. I think when a person cuts somebody off because they've been a bad faith actor in their life or something like that, I think that's a pretty reasonable choice to make. So I think that's part of the complexity of being an adult.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know if you want to say anything else before I roll this.
No, I think you've said it very well, because I think one of the problems we see in our society is people not disconnecting when a person is toxic. Not talking to your child because they don't believe in God anymore, or not talking to your parent because they don't believe in God anymore. That is, in my view, toxic behavior. There are a lot of places, I can't agree with what the Bible says. And, the scriptures I read are just, I think you probably don't want an immoral person around. I can get that. But some of them are leaders in various congregations. I mean, we see headlines talking about the less than desirable behavior of many a clergy person or just church member. I watch Cult of Dusty religiously, Monday and Fridays at least, and he does this snippet in his show about people of various religions who are abusers. And he never has a shortage of people to list. He never runs out of names. Well, why is that? Is it because there's so many of them, or because it's so prevalent? Well, the answer is there's both. There's so many people, and the abuse is prevalent. So, in a way, I do wish I saw people like Frank Turek, and maybe he's done it. Where's his presentation on that, where he's calling out his own, right? Where's Mike Lacona's presentation on that? Where's William Lane Craig's presentation on that? They may all have done it, and it never weirdly came up in any of my feeds on YouTube. You know, where's Sean McDowell talking about that? He probably would. He doesn't mind talking about the problems he sees in Christianity. But yes, I think getting yourself out of a bad situation is definitely a good thing, because at the end of the day, the universe, for all it conjures with its randomness, is only ever going to make one you. That's it. So you got to take care of you.
Wife, and your wife asks about it. You can't just say, oh honey, we just went to dinner, and leave out the part after dinner when you went to the motel. That's not saying the truth. That's lying by omission, by only mentioning one part of the truth to purposefully mislead and gaslight the other person into thinking they know the whole truth. You can see it again in another question on the website called, can a person resign from being one of Jehovah's Witnesses? Where they say that yes, a person can resign from their religion, and closes by saying that elders can't coerce or pressure someone to remain a Jehovah's Witness. The fact that anyone looking to resign from this religion will be shunned by anyone remaining inside the religion, family and friends included, isn't even hinted at in the whole article. The article merely focuses on how someone might stop being a Jehovah's Witness, not on the consequences, which are the important part of the whole issue.
And again, just quickly, because some of y'all, gotta keep the parallels in mind. A lot of us are former Christians. You gotta relate to it as a former Christian. Is that not the same thing when they be talking about the free gift of Christ? Right? It's a gift you have to. It's not pressure. It's not coerced. You have to freely accept the gift of Jesus into your heart. Okay, well, what happens if I don't? Well, you're gonna die and burn in hell.
Consequences.
Right.
Consequences.
So I mean,
it would
coercion. Go ahead.
Well, I think it's not even an argument that I don't think it could be argued against that if Christianity didn't have hell, there'd be far fewer Christians.
Yeah.
If it was just you don't get to join God in heaven forever and sing his praises and have a mansion and walk on those glass streets, you don't get to do any of that. Sorry. But I love my grandma and I miss her dearly, and I wouldn't mind singing a few hymns with her if I could. But I don't know if I want to sit around for like billions of years. I mean, I can get bored. Thank goodness for the internet and books. So I think I've discussed with other people the hell thing, because they talk about obedience, and that's part of this discussion as well. If you want to obey and stick to the Christian religion and obey everything, eventually there's a guy or a woman up there on that stage telling you what you ought to obey, because a lot of people aren't reading the Bible, so you're not going to learn it from the Bible.
Christians don't want to be in heaven. I'm gonna just keep it.
You don't think so?
No, I'm gonna just keep it to you like this. Again, the water cooler talk on Monday morning amongst the Christians is the competition to get out of church the soonest. The guy who lost, the guy who loses on Monday morning is the man who wanted to get home and watch the game, but missed the highlight of the year in the first half because he was still in church. Okay, the winner is the dude who says, I got in church by 10, I got out of church by 11, I was on my couch with a bucket of chili and a side of wings by 12. That's the guy who's winning. I'll say why? Because Christians don't want to spend the entire afternoon with Jesus, nevertheless in eternity. And here's the part that's a killer for a lot of Christians. I'm gonna just keep it to you real. It's the same thing with your family. A lot of y'all were dreading even going home for Thanksgiving. If you did, you got there the night before and you left the next morning. You were not trying to spend, you would dread spending a week with your family. You got some relatives that, let's just say, have been given a few extra decades of precious, precious life. And you won't call them this weekend and see how they're doing. I'm not saying that's everybody, but that's most of us.
That's a lot of people.
Most of us, we don't really, our families, like, they cool, but like, we don't really hang with them. We don't really do much with them. Like, yeah, we love them, but not in like a, I want to be around you all the time type of way. So that's just one of the frauds of heaven too. Trust me, you don't love your grandmother that much. I hate to be the one to tell you, but
oh.
But it's just the way it is. It's just the way it is, and it's funny to hear them talk about that and then contrast it with the way we actually live our lives. That's all I'm saying, right?
Well, I think though, I think there's an important difference. The arguments, right? The bickering, the getting picked on, or whatever it is that makes people not want to go home. It's not going to be like that in heaven. Excuse me. It's supposed to be all glorious and beautiful and perfect.
That's
and
true.
There's no
That's
strife. True. Except for, unless you read Revelation, where the people are under, under God's throne, asking, "Hey, when are you gonna hurt all those people who hurt us?" Which, to me, if heaven was that wonderful, that shouldn't even come to those people's mind. It shouldn't. Wouldn't a more beautiful thought for those people who are in heaven and not toiling anymore, not suffering anymore, be like, you know what? Lord, open their eyes so that they may see the light of you and Jesus as we did, which is why we're here. Nah, instead, those mofos want vengeance. So how great can it be up there if you want someone else to suffer?
Yeah, I honestly think death sounds so sweet by comparison to just be done,
to not exist anymore, to be done.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm with. All right, here we go.
Not only is this clearly on purpose, they teach Jehovah's Witnesses outright to do this. The faithful witness does not commit perjury when testifying. His testimony is not tainted with lies. However, this does not mean that he is under obligation to give full information to those who may want to bring harm to Jehovah's people in some way. The patriarch Abraham and Isaac withheld facts from some who did not worship Jehovah. Rahab of Jericho misdirected the king's men. Jesus Christ himself refrained from divulging total information when doing so could have caused needless harm. He said, "Do not give what is holy to dogs, neither throw your pearls before swine." Why not? So that they may never turn around and rip you open. Here, they are directly telling.
Okay, can you pause it? Can you pause it? Can you pause it? Okay. When Jesus said that in Matthew chapter 7, he's referring to or whatever the verse was. He's referring to people. That's taken from during the Sermon on the Mount. And as he's talking, the they, if you go back and read that, the they is the crowd. They will turn and rend you. Now, later in following chapters in Matthew, because the Sermon on the Mount is sort of this literary device. People talk about how wonderful it is. As a former writer, I see it in a completely different way, because it's an outline for the events that occur in the Gospel of Matthew. I went and detailed like why this is and wrote a bunch of stuff out at one point. But you will remember, so do not cast your pearls before swine, or else they'll return and rend you. You'll remember Jesus later casts the demons into swine. And also do not give what is holy unto dogs. He says to the woman who comes to him to have her daughter healed, that this is for Israel. Like, this isn't for you. Like, why would I give my blessing to you? You're like a dog. Okay, I'm not quoting exactly. I'm paraphrasing. And she says, even dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. Something to that effect. So, Sermon on the Mount is sort of leading up to all these little events. They're dropping clues that here's what's coming. But imagine Jesus standing there. Is there a more cruel thing he could say to this woman? Right? So, in a way, sometimes the whole be like Jesus deal ignores how Jesus was.
Yeah, Jesus was an asshole.
The worst.
And
To that woman in that case, he clearly was. There's not a second explanation.
And
it's completely unnecessary behavior.
Jesus is very overrated. It's another thing Christians don't believe. He wouldn't pass the, like, the Bible would not be on your reading list. If I took these stories, even as secular people, even as atheists, non-believers, scholars, you know, the fascination with the faith is because so many people believe it. If you took your average Bible scholar and took it out of that context and just dropped the words on them and we're like, here's a Hebrew story, yeah, check out this sermon this guy gave on the Mount of Olives or whatever, they'd be like, yeah, sounds like oh, okay, cool story. Like nobody would be that interested in it. They treat Jesus like he's just this, you know. But yeah, it's a religion thing.
Oh, he's the best. He's the smartest ever, most handsome ever, most capable ever. Nobody ever had shinier hair.
Yeah, on the face on the face of what he says, it's like that's an album I'm not even listening to. Like, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus on the shelf.
Information that could cause harm to the religion. They should keep that information secret, comparing sharing that information to giving pearls to pigs. This is an institutionalized way of lying that Jehovah's Witnesses are outright taught to do. But what happens if someone asks a question that has no good approximation of the truth to lie with? They will try to obfuscate the truth. Take a look at this question. Do Jehovah's Witnesses feel that they are the only people who will be saved? The answer is yes. The Jehovah's Witnesses believe that soon the world will end in the Battle of Armageddon, where everyone who wants to be saved has to live like an exemplary Jehovah's Witness if they want to survive. They themselves have published that, saying, in fact, with God's day of judgment so near today, all the world should keep silent before the sovereign Lord Jehovah and hear what he says through the little flock of Jesus' anointed followers and their companions, his other sheep. Annihilation awaits all who do not listen and who thereby set themselves against rule by God's kingdom. It's even taught to children in indoctrination cartoons.
It's kind of like going on an airplane.
It's even taught
happen if
children thereby.
I just want to point this out to the non-believers in the room. When you hear this, in fact, with God's day of judgment so near today, all the world should keep silent before the sovereign Lord Jehovah and hear what he says through the little flock of Jesus's anointed followers and their companions, his other sheep. Now, here's that key part, though. Annihilation awaits all who will not listen and who thereby set themselves against rule by God's kingdom. I just think we live in such a scary time. And a lot of it is the religious people, particularly the serious evangelical Christians. I mean, these people have, you know, they're scary, right? The COVID was scary. The George Floyd thing was scary. The way they have responded to conflict all over the world is scary. You know, in the culture war we see, where they're talking about day one, ending the transgender ideology and all this stuff. I mean, this is scary. This is. I mean, they borrow stuff from the Nazis and don't even and don't even change the names. They be forgetting that people even remember that stuff. But here's something I want everybody out there to remember. The reason they can persecute the LGBTQ people is because they can find them. it's because they know who they are. Which means they're going after people who were brave enough to be out, who are brave enough to live their truth. I don't think a lot of us, as many atheists, are. And imagine if we were. Imagine if we said, no, for real though, I'm tired of the religious madness. I just want it to be normal to be an atheist in public life. I'm tired of people bringing the Bible to tell me why I should vote for them. Like, it's just, people just need, and I'm not talking nothing radical, y'all. I'm just talking about just making it normal to like be an atheist. Like, your entire family knows you're an atheist. All your coworkers know you're an atheist. Same way it is for Christians. Now, with scriptures like this in the Bible, how could we think that if we were that out and open or with our atheism, that they would not be coming after us the same exact way? I think that's why a lot of people in most of our lives don't know that we're atheists. So I always want to point it out when the scripture, because for some reason we'll see where they persecute other groups based on the scripture, and then act like it doesn't apply to non-believers. And to me, this is something I had to learn for myself, right? It's very different than being an atheist. I'm talking about something very different than not believing. Not believing, yeah, that happens. Okay, you no longer accept the blase and clave noise. Okay, that's one thing. I'm talking about realizing if given the opportunity, you will be at the top of their list of people to hate. What? Openly, people who will not listen to God? Oh no, y'all get in the ovens first. Oh no. Tell the LGBTQ people to come back tomorrow. Yeah, well, whatever. We don't care. We got some motherfucking atheists to burn. We'll get to y'all later. Racism, the black people get in the back. We'll deal with y'all later. No, we done found some real explicit enemies of God. Oh, we gonna take care of them first. That's what I'm trying to get people to understand. We are not safe around these folks, and they got all sorts of scripture to take out on. Take us out with. Go ahead.
If it were, I'd say, in a way more strict, as Paul said, I guess that was Paul in 1 Corinthians, that let God judge them because they're outside of the church. Think of how much easier people's lives would be if they just said, I'm not going to judge you. I'm going to let God judge you.
Yeah, I'm not going to judge you. I'm just going to let the...
No one told you were bad because you had another adult or another, if you're a teen or whatever, someone that's not the opposite sex. If no one got upset about that, just let's let God judge you. What if you instead said, I'm going to take a path of kindness and loving and generosity towards you, and if my example's good enough, other people will follow it. That's why Tony Robbins is so successful. I bet he's made more money off people giving him money because they thought he knew what to do and he's a guru than he ever did investing.
Oh yeah.
People, the people and people of his ilk, right? The motivational speakers. And I seriously dated a woman who wanted to become a motivational speaker to become wealthy.
Yeah, but that's
by motivational speaking. I'm like, so wait, you don't have some other plan? Like, you're not going to build this or do that or start this company? She goes, nope. I'm going to motivate people, and that's going to build me a fortune.
And that's what what's his name has figured out. Oh man, I can't think of his name. Houston mega preacher Joel Osteen. Boom, got it. Let's go.
Set themselves against rule by God's kingdom. It's even taught to children in indoctrination cartoons.
It's kind of like going on an airplane. What would happen if someone wanted to bring something on the plane that wasn't allowed?
They couldn't go on the trip.
Right. It's the same with Jehovah. He wants us to be his friend and live in paradise forever. But we have to follow his standards to get there.
That's about stopping being gay to be allowed into the paradise, by the the way.
Carrie drew two mommies. She told me they're married to each other.
People have their own ideas about what is right and wrong. But what matters is how Jehovah feels.
So very clearly, Jehovah's Witnesses believe and teach each other that only they have the chance of salvation, and anyone outside the group cannot be saved from Armageddon unless they convert. So the answer to the question, do Jehovah's Witnesses feel that they are the only people who will be saved, is very clearly yes. And even a Jehovah's Witness child will be able to tell you that. But saying that outright doesn't sound good, right? It puts on display the supremacist nature of this religion. And Jehovah's Witnesses know this. That's why if someone outside the Jehovah's Witnesses asks, the answer is, unsurprisingly, no.
No. Many millions who lived in centuries past and who weren't Jehovah's Witnesses will have an opportunity for salvation. Additionally, many now living may yet begin to serve God, and they too will gain salvation. In any case, it's not our job to judge who will or won't be saved. That assignment rests squarely in Jesus' hands.
So let's examine that answer. The first part of that answer already obfuscates the truth, since it talks about the doctrine of the resurrection, where people who died without hearing or accepting the message will be resurrected to give them one last chance of becoming a Jehovah's Witness before facing permanent destruction. So even then, they believe only Jehovah's Witnesses will be saved, because if they fail to become Jehovah's Witnesses, then they will not be saved. And that's clearly not what the question is asking. The second part says that many now living may convert to being a Jehovah's Witness, so they can be saved if they convert, which again is not what the question is asking. And lastly, it closes by saying that it isn't their job to determine who will or will not be saved. That's Jesus' job. That also doesn't answer the question, only changes it to who do Jehovah's Witnesses believe Jesus will save in Armageddon. This whole answer actually refuses to be an answer, and instead obfuscates the truth with tangential answers that, well, somewhat based on the truth, are not the answer to the question. The Jehovah's Witnesses basically say, no, we don't believe Jehovah's Witnesses are the only ones who are going to be saved, because many right now can still gain salvation by converting to Jehovah's Witnesses. The whole page avoids the question entirely and obfuscates the truth merely because this page is aimed at outsiders, and they aren't seen by Jehovah's Witnesses as ready to know the truth, because Jehovah's Witnesses are afraid their beliefs would be recognized as supremacist ones. And again, they use that form of lying even when they're under oath.
Does the governing body, or do the members of the governing body, do you see yourselves as modern day disciples, the modern day equivalent of Jesus' disciples?
We certainly hope to follow Jesus and be his disciples.
And do you see yourselves as Jehovah God's spokespeople on earth?
That, I think, would seem to be quite presumptuous to say that we are the only spokesperson that God is using. The scriptures clearly show that someone can act in harmony with God's Spirit in giving comfort and help in the congregations. But if I could just clarify a little, going back to Matthew 24, clearly Jesus said that in the last days, and if Jehovah's Witnesses believe these are the last days, there would be a slave, a group of persons who would have responsibility to care for the spiritual food. So in that respect, we view ourselves as trying to fulfill that role.
Jeff believes that him, along with the rest of the governing body, are the modern day equivalent.
The funny thing is he was off the hook, right, y'all? He had got himself off the hook. There's other congregations. It's presumptuous to presume we're the only ones. He could have just stopped. He could have just stopped. And then, but they have to. They're like hooked on it. He had to get it out. But don't you get it twisted. We're here to do that duty. But yeah, gang, if that didn't sound like some Christian apologetics, I think the one thing to do is have that conversation. When you have somebody in your life that's really willing to talk about it, go there, and let them squirm, watch them dance. Do you think I'm going to hell? It's a very simple question. You will get some very interesting. You will get some very interesting. What did you say?
Well, sure. My friend Amanda, who's Jewish, she brought this up to me. And she again, she couldn't have been more sweet about it when she did. Do you think I'm going to hell? And the pause.
That's it.
The pause. Because Christian doctrine says my Jewish friend here is going to hell. And I had to consider what justice could be in a God who would send her to hell. Because I considered her to be a more enlightened person than me, a kinder person than me. And again, she's someone I admire and respect to this day. And who am I? What kind of friend would I be if I stood before God and God's about to let me in and she's there getting judged and he's going to send her to hell? I would have to say, like, God, you clearly aren't omniscient, because if you were, you'd know how much better a place heaven would be if she were here. Because if you're going to just make her suffer down in hell, it's not going to be a better place.
Facts.
But it'll have better company.
Made art.
So I couldn't in good conscience. It's okay. Oh, Tiger Woods. I couldn't in good conscience want to be around a God who would send great, wonderful people to hell. So absolutely put that question to your loved one or your interlocutor and get them to answer it. And if you can get them to elaborate, what you're probably going to hear is a lot of, well, that's what the Bible says. Well, that's what the Bible said. And my friend's name is Amanda. And Amanda so beautifully said to me, well, what do you think?
Yeah. All right, let's
and again, more pausing. Go ahead.
Portraying that same thing. But when asked, he obfuscates the truth by saying, we hope to follow Jesus and be his disciples, which is not what he was asked. Then, when he's asked if he believes that they are the only spokespeople that God is using, he says that could seem quite presumptuous, and proceeds to continue obfuscating the truth instead of answering truthfully. In reality, Jehovah's Witnesses believe the governing body is the only channel God is using to guide his people. And they mention that repeatedly in their publications. And again, Jehovah's Witnesses are taught to obfuscate the truth to strangers. Like in this example where David's Plain teaches his followers how to obfuscate the fact that Jehovah's Witnesses would rather let their kids die than allowing them to get a blood transfusion.
Consider this. Now you're working from door to door, and you meet a householder who says, you Jehovah's Witnesses are terrible people. You let your children die. You don't accept medical treatment. Well, you ask the householder, do you know any of Jehovah's Witnesses personally? No. Then where did you get the idea that we let our children die and don't accept medical treatment? The householder says, I have it on good authority. I read it in the newspaper. Well, if it's in the newspaper, it must be true, right? Not necessarily. Remember this, reporters have a deadline to meet, and a reporter may not have the time or the inclination to check the facts. Or the reporter may have written a balanced article, but then the editor changes it. Maybe the editor doesn't like Jehovah's Witnesses, or he's been misinformed about us. Now, it's bad enough if people in the world believe everything they read in the newspaper, but brothers, let's not be among them. Let's not be naive.
David is telling his followers that a good retort to that argument is asking if they know any Jehovah's Witness personally, and to dissuade them from trusting the news to further obfuscate the truth. When he knows that argument, that Jehovah's Witnesses let children who need a blood transfusion to save their lives die, is completely true and even published in their own magazines. David even prepares his listeners to obfuscate the truth. And when Jehovah's Witnesses are done obfuscating the truth, they switch to false equivalences, like David is about to do.
So suppose a report indicates that someone has been charged with a crime, or that he's being investigated. All right, you have two words, charged and investigated. It doesn't mean he's guilty. Or suppose that someone is convicted and put in jail. Well, that would apply to our young brothers in Korea, wouldn't it? They were convicted and jailed, and what was their crime? They refused to kill someone? Did they do anything wrong? or someone is found guilty by men, as Jesus was, it doesn't mean that he's guilty in the sight of God.
Comparing themselves going to prison to Jesus being in prison is obviously a false equivalency, but it's another one of their favorite ways to lie. You can see another example of this yet again in, you guessed it, the FAQ section of JW.org. In the question, do Jehovah's Witnesses break up families or build them up? The question alone already invites a false equivalency, which in this case leads to a false dichotomy. Obviously, the fact that they might try to build families up doesn't mean they don't also break them apart. They can do both. But in this whole article, the only time they admit that there can be any friction from being a Jehovah's Witness is when only one person in a marriage converts to a Jehovah's Witness, which is why they advise people to marry only within the Jehovah's Witnesses, for their own protection, you see. This is a false equivalence, because they try and play it off as if the friction could only come one way, from prejudice against Jehovah's Witnesses, because people don't like them or don't understand them. If Jehovah's Witnesses are the ones getting shunned, they couldn't possibly be the ones doing the shunning, could they? By using this false equivalence, they can get away with focusing on whatever they're comparing this to instead of focusing on the truth, that they do break apart families, as we have already seen. And when they can't use any of these techniques, they use deflection. Jehovah's Witnesses know that some questions just cannot be answered without lying directly, because if strangers knew the raw truth, they would be put off by it. Just look at how Jade is shown dealing with her Bible study when she asks a very important question.
So God is love, but he's gonna kill billions. How's that work?
Well, it'll make sense later. But for now, let's just focus on what I was talking about earlier.
What she said is the truth, but Jade knows that she needs to indoctrinate her into finding that truth acceptable. So she just says that it will make sense later, aka when she's more indoctrinated. And they again teach witnesses to do that exact same thing, especially when they preach to strangers.
I'd like to know if the Bible says anything about gay marriage.
You know, that's a really good question. Well, in a way, it does talk about that. But would it be okay with you if I answered this other question first? Then I can do some research and find the best possible scriptures to be able to answer your question next time that I come. Does that sound okay?
Sure, that's fine.
Did you see how our sister just gave an honest response?
The witness knows.
All right, see, hang on.
The answer to that question. She doesn't have to research it. What she doesn't know is how to spin it in a way that won't make the religion sound homophobic. So,
okay, that is what so many Christians are doing to us right now. They know how bigoted the people in their church are. They know it's coming from their church. They know that this whole thing has been basically fought as a religious crusade. But they act like, well, they're not particularly prejudiced against anybody, and it's really unfortunate that there's this conflict. I mean, the amount of gaslighting involved, and this is what I mean when I say this should be a single issue deconversion for people. I think if and I'm disappointed it wasn't in my case, but I think a fully mature person with a good grasp on what's going on in the world around them would say, oh, no, I can't be part of a group that is so central to the persecution of our LGBTQ people. And yeah, it frustrates me the way they act like they're not really sure what's going on, or if their church is really like that and all this type of stuff. It's they look the other way. It's the same thing with hell. It's the same thing with all this. They look the other way, and then they just don't want to talk about it, and then they think that makes them one of the good ones because they don't discuss the things that make them uncomfortable.
Well, let's just dig into this a little bit. To discuss the things that make people uncomfortable helps them really understand what they believe. Christianity, and I think we have a duty to try to understand where they're coming from. Christianity has asked of its adherents to follow it, and you're supposed to be willing to give up everything and follow Jesus. Now, this isn't just possessions, this is ideology. And I think for a lot of people, when a non-believer troubles the ideology, forget the possessions, let them keep their stuff. But when you start picking away at, as I do on Facebook, when I see like Vodi Balcom posts that I just utterly disagree with, or that I want to make Christians aware, there is this stipulation, or there is this stick that the Christian God beats people with. It's important to do that to wake them up. You mentioned single issue. That's not going to do it for most people. But if you find enough of those little holes, those little pinholes, they will start to, I think, honestly assess the value of what they're being told that they need to adhere to. They'll begin to, like history, they may never let go that Jesus was a real person until you start saying, well, we don't have any historical proof that a bunch of people rose from the dead and went into Jerusalem to greet old friends. Like, we don't have proof that happened. The Bible says it did. Wouldn't that have been told all around the region, even to Babylon? Well, maybe, yeah, sure. Well, there's no stories of that happening. When you approach them with logic, I think you have a harder time than when you approach them with emotion, as Amanda did me. It's not logical for a God to destroy a good person that doesn't think Jesus is his son, from my perspective. But emotionally, it's horrifying that God would destroy a good person simply because they didn't think that Jesus was their Lord and Savior, right? That Jesus walked the earth, did miracles, healed people, and so on and so on. If that story isn't good enough for them, it doesn't mean, in my mind, in the mind of millions of other people, it doesn't mean that that person is a vessel of wrath fitted for destruction. But there are Christians by the busload who think that's all you need. It's all the justification you need.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Or instead of admitting to the truth freely, she deflects the conversation so she doesn't have to answer that incriminating question. And a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses don't even know when they're lying. Not just because, as we've seen, they have been taught to spin the truth the best way possible, but because the religion uses one last way to lie by changing the definition of words. Jehovah's Witnesses have gone the extra mile in lying, inventing their own definitions so they can get away with saying stuff like they are the only ones who preach around the world. As I've explained in a previous video, their definition of preaching is talking to unbelievers, especially with door-to-door canvassing. Most Jehovah's Witnesses don't know that the actual meaning of the world is talking about your religion with believers and unbelievers alike. So things like speeches in their kingdom halls are technically preaching, because then they would have to admit that multiple, much larger religions outreach them every day. And they use this word redefinition technique with a lot of words that are uncomfortable to Jehovah's Witnesses. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses are creationists. Creationists believe that God...
Oh, this is so good. All right, but look, we're talking about the Christianese, and then hang on, let's get into this creationist stuff. Ooh, I love this. All right.
Preaching, because then they would have to admit that multiple, much larger religions outreach them every day. And they use this word redefinition technique with a lot of words that are uncomfortable to Jehovah's Witnesses. For example, Jehovah's Witnesses are creationists. Creationists believe that God or a superior being created everything, the earth, the animals, and such. And Jehovah's Witnesses not only believe that God personally created the earth, they go an extra step by rejecting evolution and preaching that every animal was designed by Jehovah and Jesus the way that they are today. So what happens when in their FAQ they have to answer the question, do Jehovah's Witnesses believe in creationism? Well, Jehovah's Witnesses have decided that labeling themselves as creationists would be bad, so they reply with a lie. No.
No, Jehovah's Witnesses do believe that God created everything, but we do not agree with creationism.
They elaborate by saying that they don't believe in what some creationists say, mainly the length of the 6-day creation and the age of the earth. Since they don't believe that the earth was created in 6 natural days, nor that the earth is 5,000 years old, they claim that they are not creationists. But that is not what the word means, is it? Creationism is a religious belief that nature and aspects such as the universe, the earth, life, and humans originated through acts of divine intervention. And that is what Jehovah's Witnesses believe. But since they don't like being called creationists, because they like to assume that most of their beliefs are in accordance with scientific facts, they change the definition of creationism to someone who believes the earth was created in 6 days, and it's a few thousand years old, to say we don't believe in that, and therefore we are not creationists. And their redefinition of words allows them to perpetuate some of their most damaging doctrines. That's how they justify threatening people with destruction and Armageddon if they don't become Jehovah's Witnesses.
All right. So I got to pause on this creationism thing. That was so good. Oh, it was so good. I get so annoyed at this. Gang, they're all creationists. They're all creationists, and the same way Jehovah's Witnesses do that, Christians do this on the daily. Now, I'm actually hoping Rob and I'll be streaming our class next semester. It's the first time we've ever done anything like this, so I hope you guys will participate. But that we'll get into this in great detail in the course, but to put it simply, I don't really understand a version of Christianity that's intelligible to me that isn't based on creationism. Yes, we have the God spoke the universe and everything into existence in 6 days, took a rest on the 7th, about 6,000 to 10,000 years ago version of creationism, but that's really just young earth creationism. If somebody says, oh yeah, I think God created us, but the earth is much older or whatever, that's just old earth creationism, right? If somebody says, oh, I accept the full scientific Darwinian account, I just think God did it, we call that theistic evolution. Guess what? It's also creationism, right? Because all of them presuppose an intervention of God. Every single one of them. It's just a matter of when, where, and how. And to be honest, Christians should be that way. When a Christian tells me they're not a creationist, I honestly just think you're a punk. Because it may not be popular or in vogue to be labeled a creationist, but how many believers are going to tell you we're not created? Because the creator is just part of most people's definition of God. When you start to talk to me about you're a believer in God and you're a Christian, but you don't believe in the supernatural or you don't think we were actually created, I honestly just think to myself, you're just not a Christian. Or at least you're not religiously a Christian. I'd probably say you're culturally a Christian, socially a Christian. You know, you're wearing the jersey, right? But you're not a person who really accepts like the fundamental God claims. And I think being the creator is like a fundamental God claim for most versions of Christianity. And so I mean that sincerely, that they're all creationists. And so they do the same thing that this guy is talking about Jehovah's Witnesses doing, which is where they'll basically accept more or less of the scientific account and then use that to say that they're not creationist when actually they are. The other thing about it is, if I was talking to the Christians that say this about it, first off, it's just a cop-out, right? They're not understanding what science is. And what I mean by that is science is a process where we come up with natural explanations of natural phenomena. So once we have a well-supported explanation for something, it means that something is a natural phenomena, period, end of story. or else like that's the name of the game. Sorry. But here's what I would say to a Christian, because this is more what should, put a pebble in their shoe. Why would your God work as though your God is not working? It's the mundane claim. It's the my God did it. Yes, it's divine hiddenness. Yes, it's that. And to me, that was a bigger problem for my faith. But yeah, let's keep going. But remember that, gang, they are all creationists.
Because for some reason that I can't pinpoint the origin of, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that a threat is something that might or might not happen. And since Armageddon is definitely going to happen, then it couldn't possibly be a threat. When a threat is simply a statement of an intention to inflict damage or other hostile action on someone as a retribution for something done or not done. Which is exactly why you get destroyed at Armageddon. That's why it's not surprising to see them change the definition of the word cult, since Jehovah's Witnesses definitely are one, but would never admit to it. A cult usually refers to a high control group with isolationist tendencies, where obedience to their leaders must be absolute. Jehovah's Witnesses are definitely a cult under pretty much every definition of the word. But at this
All right, that is very interesting, and this is where I get into my stuff, gang, about soft culting and why it's so important. If you look up like cult, there's nothing. Let's do it. Let's do it together.
Oh yeah, let me do that. Yeah. Wonder, does it provide exceptions?
Here we go. A system of religious veneration or devotion directed towards a particular figure or object. Okay. A relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange or sinister. Okay. A misplaced or excessive admiration for a particular person or thing. Okay. But gang, that's why I talk about soft culting. Every single one of these definitions applies to Christianities, but nothing about the definition says they have to be a high demand group. See, so we work ourselves into these little cultural sort of common definitions that we use so that we could set aside, and and I believe that that's a really big part of the soft culting process. It needs the term cult to be associated with those high demand groups. And all I'm trying to do is say, if you strip away some of those arbitrary extra things we build into the definition, Christianity is just a cult. Like, I'm sorry. It's you know what it reminds me of? People define the word in a way to exclude, versions of religion that they want to be comfortable with, that they want to coexist with, right? And some people could argue that that's useful, right? Because they're trying to distinguish those groups, right? They're trying to say something about high demand groups in particular, for instance, right? But I would say it's also useful to include them for the reason of they actually fit the definition. What it reminds me of is a taxonomy, where a lot of the definitions that we've used and come up with certain things, they're made just to like exclude us from the other animals, right? So many of the ways they grouped organisms and came up with stuff was that originally they like didn't want us in with the other animals, so they tried to come up with definitions that would exclude us. And
Sumami read my mind, by the way. Sorry, Sumami read my mind with the diet cult comment.
Exactly.
I was thinking that precisely.
Exactly.
Well done.
Good value.
Well done, good and faithful viewer.
Exactly. There you go.
At this point of the video, you won't be surprised that the Jehovah's Witnesses have an article in, guess where, the FAQ section of their website that actually asks if Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult, and lies with a no, Jehovah's Witnesses are not a cult.
No, Jehovah's Witnesses are not a cult. Rather, we are Christians who do our best to follow the example set by Jesus Christ and to live by his teachings.
Obviously, these aren't mutually exclusive things. Several cults have been comprised of Christians doing their best to follow Jesus' teachings and doctrines, so they are already lying and deceiving before they change the meaning of the word cult. They start by redefining the word to mean a new or unorthodox religion, which is the most general and least descriptive definition of the word cult I have ever seen. And then they proceed to further redefine the word by defining it as a dangerous religious sect with a human leader. Not only is this a redefinition of the word, they lie.
And they went all the way.
Do not look to any.
They went all the way with their manipulation this, because they went with some think of a cult as a danger. When you go, you know, some people you think of
Some
it like
say,
this.
Some say, well, they don't want to indict themselves, right?
Yeah.
Look, does it have to have a negative connotation, the word cult? I don't believe it does. I like Nissan 300Zs. Well, I'm not in a cult, and if I had one, I wouldn't consider myself to be in a cult either. There simply are subcultures. There simply are, in religion, different sects of religion that go on. There was a video I saw by Gnostic Informant earlier this week. I really listened to it, by Gnostic Informant last week. And my comment, he talked about the different sects of early Christianity that there were. And my comment was an alternative title: Jesus had a lot of sects. That doesn't mean that they're bad. It doesn't mean that that's a bad, to have subgroups is a bad thing. It isn't in this respect, as far as religion goes. For me, it isn't. But for them, they want to save face. They want to appear pure. Better than that, they want to appear as if they are demonstrating the proper way to worship Jesus. And that is super important, because not only is it a big organization, it's big business. The Jehovah's Witness, the organization, has a lot of money. So they want to keep that going. They don't want to stop that flow.
Yeah, and you know, they need, like, people just need to get over it. I like the issue. The issue is that it's not true, right? The issue is, you know, they think they're persecuted for Christ's sake and all that type of stuff. It's just we just don't see it. We just don't believe them, essentially. And you know, to me, that's the problem. The problem is they've been taken for a ride, and they are potentially trying to do the same to others.
As a dangerous religious sect with a human leader. Not only is this a redefinition of the word, they lie and say that Jehovah's Witnesses do not look to any human as their leader, because they have conditioned their followers to believe their leaders, the governing body, aren't actual leaders. They are just taking the lead, which is literally the same thing. And obviously,
right,
anyone who says
how many preachers get up there on Sunday morning in front of a flock of thousands of people there to follow them and literally preach a sermon that includes, and we do not follow men? It's just, what well, who the hell did we come here to listen to?
Precisely. It's not man's doctrine. It's God's doctrine delivered to human beings through the courtesy and message of Jesus Christ. That's what's going on, we're told. But it's just some guys saying what other guys said a few thousand years ago with a modern interpretation to communicate whatever the message of the day is to the congregation.
Yep, with it.
their teachings, like the shunning of children, prohibition of blood transfusions, and shielding of CSA cases are dangerous, will immediately be labeled as an apostate and will not be able to remain in the religion. So they can get away with saying they are not a religious sect with human leaders, even though that is exactly what they are. But they go one step further. You see, at some point, every cult realizes that you have to lie to the outside world constantly. They can't rely on logical fallacies and deflection forever. They have to teach followers to perpetuate a positive image of the cult, even if they have to lie about it, because the image of the cult is more important than telling the truth. But as we said before, Jehovah's Witnesses believe that they are the most honest people on earth. So how can they get away with it? How can they lie all the time while claiming to be honest? Well, you can do it if you change the definition of the word lying itself. Lying is simply saying something you know is not true. That's it. However, Jehovah's Witnesses don't follow this definition of lying. Jehovah's Witnesses believe it isn't lying if the person you're lying to doesn't deserve to know the truth. In part of what's called theocratic warfare, we must tell the truth to one who is entitled to know. But if one is not so entitled, we may be evasive. As a soldier of Christ, he is in theocratic warfare, and he must exercise utter caution when dealing with God's foes. Thus, the scriptures show that for the purpose of protecting the interests of God's cause, it is proper to hide the truth from God's enemies.
But yeah, see, this is the case too in Christian traditions. That's how that passage about casting your pearls before swine or whatever, that's how that's interpreted. There's another passage about baby food and milk and whatever, when I was you got the baby food and then you stop using the milk as your diet when you get older or whatever. There's a lot of passages like that. Some people even think the 10 Commandments themselves are really about the way you are to treat like your fellow Israelites, yeah, your fellow brethren,
not
in your
other
faith,
people,
not
just
other
Israelites.
people. Yeah, so that's interesting. And then I think there's a lot of other people who the thing that comes away to me is they don't see it as lying because in a sense they're pretending. They're making believe.
In-group too. Well, go ahead and finish.
That was it. Just that they're doing make believe, and there's something about that that's different to them. Like they don't because obviously they don't see it as that, but I do think that that's mechanistically what's at play, right? It's like if your child comes home and they tell you they're a cowboy or something, right? And they've got the hat on and the buckle and the whatever, like I'm being as charitable as I can, right? But we wouldn't say your child is lying to you so much as we would saying they're pretending, they're doing make believe, right?
Precisely.
And I think that's what's probably going on with a lot of people of faith.
Well, I think they have a responsibility. How would I say this? I don't have a kind of way to say it at the moment, but they're preserving the illusion. It's like going to a theme park and you see cartoon characters of some kind in suits, right? People dressed up in those suits. You see, whatever. I'm gonna just make up a name. Oh, let's make up a Christian name. You see Bible Man from the Bible Man series. So you use him. You see him, and then 20 minutes later, at a completely different part of the park, you see Bible Man again, and it's a different guy doing it. Because that character is expected in that environment, the people who run the theme park have come up with the idea of placing multiple people in that role, so that wherever you go, you are re-immersed in the illusion, right? Now imagine being a 3-year-old kid and it's some other figure from cartoons or whatever, it's that same feeling like, wow, there she is from that cartoon that I enjoy and watch almost every day. There he is from that, and so on and so on. And for adults, it's magical as well, because we will see characters that we remember from our childhood too, and that are dear to us. And now our own children are what? Wide-eyed and thankful to be in the same presence, because we told them, oh, it's so funny, you ought to watch it. And we may have sat down and watched it with them, and now we indoctrinated our kid to enjoy it as much as we do. Again, the organization, any religious organization, has a responsibility to keep that enthusiasm alive. Not purely financial. I go there a lot, but I work in finance. But to keep the organization going, you need people. When AI takes over, if it ever does, it's not going to have a religion. They'll all have their own. Each system will have its own.
Yeah.
That'll no doubt reinvent.
Well, this is why one of the other superpowers of Christianity to me is denominationalism, which is it's the congregation version of buffet Christianity. When we say people pick and choose aspects of their religion, or they do the cafe Christianity thing, you can do that with any other religion. You be a cafe Muslim or a cafe Buddhist or whatever, but there probably isn't a congregation to immerse yourself in and build community around that wherever you at. You probably have to be in a part of the world where that's the dominant religion, or some crazy major city, right? Like where there's just gonna be enough, right? And so that's the thing about Christians, is it's almost like that multiple people playing that role in the park. At least in America, wherever you go, you're gonna be able to find a church. And not just a church. You can go to a church and say, I don't like the worship style at this church, I'm going to another church. I don't like, this church is a little too hardcore Trumplicans. Okay, I'm gonna go somewhere else. Now I'm not saying that everybody finds a perfect church, but what I'm saying is Christianity is the only religion in this country where everybody's got pretty much multiple options in a 20-mile driving range, right?
Yeah.
So that's that difference, right? That's for them. There's somebody all over the park. For other religions, there's just that dude in the back corner, and he's off today. So,
look, my neighbor is a minister, and if you go to his church and it's not your cup of tea, and you still want to go to church, he'll sit you down and say, well, what are you looking for? And he knows enough people to point you in the direction. And he'll pick up the phone. I'll call so-and-so who I know over at such and such a church. They're more the tradition you seek. So I'll get you in touch with them, and you go ahead and go over there. We'll happily welcome you back at any time. But by all means, go ahead and be spiritually fed at this other fountain, or amongst this other flock. Go ahead, go for it. Don't walk away. That's not his answer. His answer is, we'll find you somewhere else to go.
Yeah, exactly.
Of it not being lying if you decide the other person doesn't deserve to know the truth is repeated all throughout their literature, including in modern times. Sarai could say that she was Abram's sister because she really was his half-sister. Furthermore, he was not under obligation to divulge information to people who were not entitled to it. Faithful servants of God in modern times heed the Bible's command to be honest. They would never, for instance, lie under oath in a court of law when the physical or spiritual lives of their brothers are at stake, such as in times of persecution or civil distress. However, they heed Jesus' counsel to be cautious of serpents and yet innocent as doves. And I know that Jehovah's Witnesses believe that because they have literally told that to me here on this channel. As part of the preparation and research for this video, I rewatched Jeffrey Jackson's testimony to the Australian Royal Commission on stream a couple of weeks ago. And I literally got one guy, who I assume is a believing Jehovah's Witness, saying, Brother Jackson does not lie. Lying generally involves saying something false to a person who is entitled to know the truth, and doing so with the intent to deceive or to injure him or another person. Not everyone is entitled to know the truth of God's word, the Bible, especially those who would trample it into the mud, and no Christian violates God's laws. This is exactly what Jehovah's Witnesses are taught to believe. That lying isn't lying if you decided the other person doesn't deserve to know the truth. And that's why Jehovah's Witnesses can lie, sometimes overtly, while believing that they are honest. Because they
Christians do this too. They call it biblical truth. They call it gospel truth. This is one of the things I really picked up on in my deconstruction, was how much Christians had to put special words in front of everyday words to make it okay, right? Because they can't, but I hate to say this, it's a confession, and this is the game, right? Like, I mean this sincerely. What's scary to me is when you start to realize what's going on around you, but there's nothing you can do about it. You know, it's like watching the Titanic head for the iceberg and just being like, we're fucked. And you know what happens? Yeah, we're fucked. We're just about to be fucked. Like, I don't know what you want me to tell you. But that's what a lot of this is like. So when people do that, you know, the pastors and people you're talking to, when they start to do that game, they know they're lying. There's something about, right? There's some level where they are recognizing that they have to use special language. And it's kind of like talking to the sheriff, right? And talking to when you're in interrogation and you're watching every word you say, because you might screw yourself around. Most other people are going to just walk in there and be like, yeah, what happened? Oh yeah, I don't even know that person. Oh, where was I at? I don't know. Let me see, look at my calendar. Yeah, I was at work. Oh yeah, you want to call my supervisor? Like they're just not worried about it. They're not worried about it because they really didn't do the thing. They really weren't there. They're really trying to figure out why you disturbed them and got them up out of bed. But Christians, they recognize that they're saying something weird, right? And that's why they go to their special language. Yeah, it's a problem.
have literally changed the meaning of lying itself, so they can lie whenever they want if they decide the other person doesn't deserve to know the truth. If they don't, especially if they're antagonistic towards your religion, you can lie as much as you want and it doesn't count. And here is where we have to consider why they lie. As I've explained all throughout my video, the Jehovah's Witnesses are a damaging cult, and at some level they know that. They know that they have to present a front to other people that's completely artificial. As we can clearly see from all of the articles that we checked today in the FAQ section, which are written for outsiders. That's because the Jehovah's Witnesses are a cult of appearances. The most important thing to a Jehovah's Witness isn't the truth, is to live according to the appearances that the religion dictates. The religion dictates that it must be viewed as filled with people who are peaceful and who love each other. An attractive religion that every person should feel motivated to join. So no outsider must know anything negative or neutral about the religion. That's why when someone from the outside asks questions to a Jehovah's Witness, the Jehovah's Witness is not going to answer with the truth. They will instead think of an answer that makes them look good, because they aren't interested in the truth. They're interested in perpetuating their image. When Jehovah's Witnesses are asked,
you saw something very interesting there, which was the guys sort of rubbing their heads against one another and stuff. This is the danger of religion. Things like that are signs of pro-sociality. We're social beings, so there's people speak of things like touch starvation, or just our need to be around other people, have contact, share meals, fellowship, all of these things. I think it's just a real problem if we let religion be the one place that does that, because again, they're socializing us into something that's not true. They're socializing us into a cult, essentially. And so I just think that's what's weird to me is I think one of the things I pull back on the religion the most is that sort of veil of innocence, because they're really that's really the most pernicious aspect of it. Uncle Bobby always says a predator, if a predator looked like a predator, they would never predate. And that's the same thing. If religions are not going to come out and say, hey, we're a high demand group, we're just here to take your money and sell you some 2,000-year-old fables. I mean, churches would be pretty empty.
Vintage,
right?
yeah.
So instead, what they do is they essentially love bomb people and create meals for everybody to share, and let's have small groups for everybody to get into, and let's sing songs together and hear about values and get motivated together. And so I think we at some point should start looking that as what people have to fight against if we want to live in a world dictated by the truth. And that's hard because I'm essentially seeking an antisocial response to pro-social behavior, but I'm doing so because we recognize that pro-social behavior is what manipulative people do. Yeah. And so it's tough. It's tough.
Well, I do wonder if that particular example isn't something cultural to the people of that region or that town or something like that.
Yeah.
It may be that, but the desire to make others feel accepted and be accepted are huge. And you're right, there are people that do abuse that. There's no shortage of them out there on TikTok, in companies, or in politics, or you name it. The music business, whatever, they're all over the place. And they're just trying to use that to get ahead rather than use that to be one of the group and express belonging and welcoming and that sort of thing, harmony.
Yep.
A question about their religion. They will not answer with the truth. They will answer with whatever they can say to convert you, even if it's a lie. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've been working on this video for a long time. I had to.
All right, go ahead. This guy is XJW Caleb. He did a great job with that video. Really enjoyed it. There's very few things on YouTube that I think are worth watching twice. That was definitely one of them. So yeah, I just really identified with a lot of the parallels. I know that XJWs are sort of treated different out here. Like they're treated like they're like atypical amongst the different Christian denominations, and are they Christians and all this, but really, like, almost everything he said, I felt like you could point out any other Christian denomination and pretty much say the same things about them, as long as we acknowledge that we're grading on a scale, that there's going to be some variance. Like I think that's the problem with a lot of these groups, is we get into black and white thinking, and we start to think that cults and all that type of stuff is really just the extreme. Navy blue isn't dark when you compare it to black, but it's pretty dark when you compare it to salmon. But it's and I think that's what happens with a lot of the way we view churches, is like, if you're going to compare everything to Heaven's Gate, and it's like, well, so long as drinking the Kool-Aid isn't really drinking the Kool-Aid, then, they're kind of good to go. That's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. I think the baseline should be what's healthy and normal and good for human thriving. And yeah, this is the one thing I can say that gets tougher and tougher the further I get from religion, the more I get into counter apologetics and whatever else we're doing. It's just how much it's not true, right? And just how much that's the fundamental problem for me. You know, if churches were science clubs, which I know is an easy thing to say, but literally, if there was, or just concerts, right? Like when I see like what Taylor Swift is doing, like she's apparently just taking over the world, which is cool as long as she understands that we're taking over the internet. We can. There's enough space for both of us out here, but you know, like she's just trying to do positive music, fun stuff, be a positive role model, tell people to register to vote, you know, fight against the bigotry. But like when you see people at a Taylor Swift concert and they're all just like singing on top of their lungs and hugging each other and crying and whatever, you're just like, cool. Like that's, you know, that's what concerts are for. There's nobody being coerced into anything that I have a problem with. And so that's the tough thing, I think, with Christians. They're very socially invested in this group. And you know, maybe this is an important distinction that we need to make when we have these conversations with people is, you know, hey, look, I don't hate, you know, the sense of community you found. I don't think you're a bad person because you're spiritual. You know, I just don't think these claims are fundamental. I fundamentally don't think Jesus died for my sins and rose from the dead. Maybe leave that part out of it because I'm having a hard time saying it with a straight face. But yeah, that's what it is. You know, that's the number one thing. I just don't think that happened.
I think Liberty Jackson sums it up well. Warm relationships dictate people's religion more than cold reason. And that's why these churches get the advantage with the emotional connection. There needs to be an alternative to church for people.
Yeah.
Well, at the top of the show, there was a clip of Matt Dillahunty and Mr. Deity. I met Mr. Deity at one of those Sunday
No, that wasn't.
assemblies.
We didn't play it on the show.
Oh, you didn't play it on?
Yeah, we were just behind the scenes. Yeah.
Okay, folks. Well, Mr. Deity participated in one of the Sunday assemblies I went to in Los Angeles. And I don't know how common those still are, but it sure seemed like a great idea. I went to maybe 2 or 3 of them because I live out in the sticks and those are in civilization. So it's quite a drive for me. It ends up being about 3.5 hours plus being there. So if there's something like that available to you, you could probably find it on meetups or something like that. I do encourage you to go to it and enjoy. I think a lot of people in a church congregation are looking for a group of reliable people that their emotions can be trusted. Their pain, their victories, and they don't want to be taken advantage of. They just want to go and belong. And I think a lot of those people aren't sitting there out of duty. I think most of the ones after COVID or during and after COVID who felt they were going to church because of duty don't go anymore.
Yeah. I also would make a plug for this community and, you know, for what we do offline and gather. I think it's we're trying to do community more intentionally. And here's the plug for that. I think people should just try to participate in the communities that they're in. And that's difficult for me to do myself. I think that's something we should all think about. But in this sense, I think most churches actually kind of point us in a good way. I think most people, if we did most people who went to church regularly, I doubt they travel more than 15 miles to get to their church. And a lot of people don't like a lot of things about their church. They may not be crazy about the music. They may think the pastor preaches too long. A lot of that. but overall, they're willing to hang in there in the margins because that's the community they found themselves in, right? That's the community where they've made friends. That's the church where they've, got a little role, or they've just started going regularly. And next thing you know, it's just part of their lives now, right? And so when they want to do more community, they're going to just get involved in that church. And but think about that. That actually says a lot that's positive for us. It says, one, you don't have to really go crazy scouring the whole world to find people who are just like you, right? You can actually just show up at mostly a random group of people that happen to be gathering in your neighborhood and just being pro-social, getting to know each other, spending time together, just being human around other humans will actually cultivate that sense of community, right? Rather than, putting it off. So that's kind of like, I always say, like, this is the community I participate in. So I'm trying to do more in this community and make friends and do that. But yeah, if it's your job, if it's the hobbies you already have, the games you already play, whatever it might be, but definitely, I would say let's all look to start with the people that are already in our lives.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a good note to close on for me. I think we've definitely drawn out a lot of the parallels to how the dishonesty that's in Jehovah's Witnesses works in other faiths too, in particular Christianity or mainstream other forms of Christianity. But yeah, I mean that's the tough conversation to have with people, because it's an uncomfortable one when you are honest with someone that you just don't think they're telling you the truth. What are your closing thoughts? Yeah.
Oh, my closing thoughts. My closing thoughts.
You can tell he's about to get married.
Yeah. Well, it's real simple. I think anytime there's a certain amount of our audience who will see this and they've tuned in for a little bit of information about shunning, hoping to find some peace or some sort of resolution. To borrow from the Bible, I don't know where the story is. I can look it up, but there's an old woman who keeps bothering this judge because she wants justice. And the judge realizes she's not going away. So I better just give her what she wants. If you have some loved ones who are shunning you and you are persistent in reaching out to them, I don't think they can stop their ears forever. I don't think they can not listen forever. You are trying to preserve and grow the friendship, the relationship. And is it really the most Christian thing they can do to deny you that? Jesus said, love one another as I have loved you. He didn't say, I need you to not talk to your kid at all. You can still follow Jesus, follow God, however you want to say it, and love the outsider, even if you gave birth to the outsider or the outsider gave birth to you.
Yeah, appreciate that. All right, gang, that's going to do it for us. Please like the video. There are links in the description for our channels. Please subscribe to Pocket Locker 86 and my One Black Friends channel if you're not already. Leave us a comment if you're watching later. Thank you so much to everybody that tuned in. Thank you to everybody in the live chat. Really appreciate you guys.
And the well wishes for the upcoming nuptials.
Yes, he's getting married. You'll be a married man next time we see you.
Next time.
Well, we don't even know. Will we see you next Sunday? We would stay tuned. We don't know. Next Sunday's up in the air.
I kind of want to.
I think it'll be on your honeymoon.
Just surprise
I think I have a feeling we won't be having this show next weekend. but don't, maybe not. But don't be alarmed. Don't be alarmed. Yeah. Don't hit the panic button. He's
broadcasting live from Long Beach, California. From our hotel room overlooking the ocean, you know, which was comped. Thanks, Hilton.
That's too much. All right, gang. Love you guys. We'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Come hang
Take
out
care
and gather. Link
Take
up
care
with
of
the gang.
yourselves.
The link's in the description. Love you guys. See you later. Set them going.
Later.
Be good to yourselves.